Hi everyone. So this is the Thursday 610 asynchronous work, and we're going to go over the Roundtable rubric because I know that it's just been a kind of crammed year, and I think it's a little bit harder to find time for this in advisory than it normally would be. So I want to make sure that you guys know exactly what you'll be graded on during your Roundtable. So I guess before we jump into that, just a reminder that in your Roundtable there'll be your advisor, probably another teacher or a staff member from CCSC, and then some family members, and possibly one other outside person, a community member. So the only people in charge of grading you are the people who work at CCSC, and I'm going to show you what they'll be looking at throughout your presentation. So there are 3 possible grades for the roundtables. You don't necessarily end up with a number grade. You get a fail, which means try again. Or you get a pass, or if you do really, really well, you get honors. Not very many people get honors. It's pretty hard to get that. But if you get high marks on each of the parts of the rubric, you get honors. Okay, so this is the general rubric and score sheet. This is what your teacher and advisor in your roundtable will be looking at. We'll go into each part of this, but they're going to be grading you on each part of your presentation, including each artifact that you're presenting. Okay, so part 1 of the rubric is the presentation skills. This is about diction, volume, clarity, pacing, engaging the audience via eye contact. That obviously doesn't really apply this year if you are doing a virtual roundtable. And then like general body language. So the highest grade you can get on this is a 16. That's when students use a combination of verbal and nonverbal communication techniques to communicate clearly and effectively. The student communicates with confidence and power. That's kind of a lot of words to describe something. You all probably know the difference between strong presentation skills and weak presentation skills. If you're speaking clearly, loudly enough, slowly enough, those are good presentation skills. If you're doing a lot of things with your hands that don't necessarily go with the part of the presentation that you are talking about, that generally might take some points off. If you're mumbling or speaking really quietly so they can't really hear you, that would also take some points off. If you speak really quickly and they can't understand you, that might lose you some points. I guess if you speak like too slowly, maybe you'd lose some points on that, but I haven't really seen that happen too often. Okay, so tips for presentation skills. Again, speak slowly and clearly. Another reason that you want to speak slowly is because your presentation only lasts a maximum of 45 minutes. If you speak more slowly, they will have the opportunity to ask you fewer questions, which means that you can answer the questions that you know best in great detail, and you won't have to necessarily get into complex questions or questions that weren't on your study guide. So that's usually a good technique. Make sure you speak loudly enough. That's especially important in the virtual world, right? And then make sure you're practicing your questions. So people can tell if you're feeling confident about your answers. You're generally going to feel more confident about your answers if you've practiced them a bunch of times. So make sure you practice. That's part of something that makes a good presentation. All right, part 2 is the question and answer. This is where you get most of your points because you're going to get a grade for this for each presentation that you do, for each artifact that you do. So you will get up to 16 points for humanities, up to 16 points for science, and up to 16 points for math. Or Spanish, if some of you are doing Spanish. There's 2 parts of this, accuracy and clarity. That, the maximum points you get for student demonstrates full knowledge by answering at least 90% of the questions correctly and clearly. So this is just about whether you know the answers to the questions or not. That's a pretty easy grade to give. Again, if you practice a bunch, you don't need to worry about that. You will get those questions right. Then there's the justification and elaboration. I find that students have a much harder time getting full credit on this. Full credit is student requires no prompting to provide thoughtful elaboration and justification for at least 90% of answers. So this is the part of the rubric that's asking you to expand on your answers before they ask you any follow-up questions. So for example, if they say, what is thermal conductivity? And you just say, Thermal conductivity is the ability of a material to transfer heat. That is a 100% correct answer, but it doesn't really have any elaboration at all, so that'd be more like a 10 down here. A really elaborate answer to that would be, or a well-elaborated answer to that would be, thermal conductivity is the ability of a material to transfer heat. Things that have high thermal conductivity are able to transfer heat really quickly. Things that have low thermal conductivity are transfer heat really slowly. Okay, I would have lost points on the presentation skills there, clearly. But you could even go on to say some examples of each thing. That would be a really well-elaborated answer. All right, so tips for question and answer. Practice. The best way to get those answers 100% correct is to practice them a bunch. And then practice elaborating. So tell them everything that you know about the question without waiting for them to ask a follow-up question. So if they ask you a math question and you're able to like figure out the answer on paper or whatever, talk them through each of the steps so that they don't have to ask you why you did each of the steps. If they ask you a question about your science experiment, talk to them fully about how you decided the procedure and just go into great detail. Yeah, that's how you get full credit on those. All right, last part, part 3 is the overall reflectiveness. This is mostly about your roundtable letter and then the feedback that you're given at the end. So the roundtable letter, hopefully you talked about in advisory, so I'm going to skip past that because that doesn't really have anything to do with our class. The Q&A part of this rubric is, with no prompting, student shows evidence of exemplary growth and learning from any mistakes in the artifact or question and answer, or there are no noticeable errors in the artifact or Q&A. So this is a place where if you make any mistakes, if you made any mistakes in your artifact, or if you make any mistakes while you're answering, it's a really good opportunity to just go back and say, this is what I did incorrectly here, this is how I know it's incorrect, this is how I would do it differently next time. Something like that will get you full credit on the question and answer, on the reflectiveness question and answer part. Again, if you didn't make any errors, if you have a completely perfect artifact and completely perfect Q&A, which is pretty rare, then you'll get full credit for that automatically. Okay, and then the final word, this is when at the very end of the roundtable, everybody's going to give you a little bit of feedback, say you did well on this, you could improve in this. You should take a minute there and just think about what they said and then kind of repeat back to them some things that you did well in your roundtable and some things that you would improve the next time that you do a roundtable. Okay, that is the end of my talk about this rubric. You're going to go in and, as usual, do the Google form, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer any questions about this during class. All right, I'll see you soon.